Hi, I'm Mike. I guess you'd know me as the guitar player, and sometimes I speak on Sunday mornings. I guess you could say I had an atypical upbringing. In almost every respect, in every major category, would be considered a statistical outlier. Growing up, I lived in a single-parent household, and it was pretty bad, I would say. My parents were addicted to drugs, and so you can imagine all the things that go along with that. Surrounded by a tremendous amount of volatility, violence, uncertainty, and so difficult upbringing, to say the least. I lived in, I think at one point I counted 24 places before I was in high school. That ranged from renting an apartment to being homeless on the streets, all the way to actually running from the law at one point in time. Honestly, my earliest experiences at church weren't all that great. I can remember going to church at Berean Baptist. We were bused there from our neighborhood. I don't know exactly what the ministry was called. I guess it was Ghetto Kids Ministry, because that's the only kids they brought there. So it wasn't that great. Imagine taking a kid from that type of environment and putting him into a middle-class suburban Baptist church. It just wasn't a great experience overall. I really didn't have a positive church experience until I was 13 or 14, and that's when I first moved in with my aunt and uncle and attended their church. Truthfully, it was the people. I was coming out of a situation. I was living with my mom. I moved in with my aunt and uncle, and really wasn't in a good place. And so when I started attending church, I really wasn't in a spot where I had any interest in listening to what any preacher had to say from a pulpit. And it wasn't until I started to interact with the people that were in the church that my attitude towards God and my attitude towards church really started to change. Here I was, this kid who was angry and full of hurt and just really lost, and it was the people in the church that really helped move me in the right direction. I was a kid who grew up in a volatile household with very little structure and very little adult influence, and all of a sudden I have a number of parents really that sort of stepped in and helped me along the way as I was trying to figure out where I fit in this world. So my aunt and uncle obviously were key in that. They took me in after my mom moved back to Virginia, and I lived with them the rest of high school, so they played a big part. And then throughout my journey as a teenager, families like the Millers and the Fortenberrys and the Harrells and the Scotts, later on the Axtells, and then my wife's family, they all have really embraced me and invested time, energy, and effort into helping me grow as a person and helping me through my walk of faith. So I would say my life now, there are some aspects of it that are still a struggle, just like with anybody else. I would say will always be to some degree recovering from my past, but the differences are major, right? There's hope and there's purpose in what I do. Transformed from an angry kid from one environment to a place where I'm a father and a husband, and I'm raising 2 little boys that I know that I'll be able to help shape and mold in the way that they won't have to deal with those types of things, and that they'll know God from the beginning. Honestly, I used to be angry and to wonder about, why did I grow up in this way? One of the most difficult things, coming to church was that, largely the kids there, were from a totally different space than I came from. And so it was difficult at first because it was hard for us to connect and hard for us to relate because we really came from different worlds. As I think back now, as I progressed on and grown in Christ and sort of reconciled, my past, I don't view it the same way anymore. Honestly, it's viewed as my journey, and it's unique, and that hopefully, if God sees fit, that He'll put people in my life that need that specific journey, and someone that has gone through that in order to reach them. So that's the hope. I would say just remember that everybody's story is different. If you were fortunate enough to grow up in a stable environment or grow up in the church, then that's one thing, but not everybody has the same backstory. And so remembering that everyone is different, and that not everyone needs to be preached to or given a Bible. Sometimes I believe that they just need you to be who you are, who God created you to be, and that He equipped you to be in that time, in that moment, to reach that individual. Just remember that everyone, no matter how far they are away from God, they're no farther than you were before you met Him, before you had a relationship with Him.